So it was funny, after yesterday's slightly tearful post, part of me was there saying, you really going to put that up on the internet? and and yes, because this channel, I'm realizing as it's just evolving, is just about being human. It's about kind of watching the human experience and being okay with all of it. We tend to judge the feelings that come through or the emotions, and we kind of say, that's not okay, or that's not okay, or that makes me look whatever, or people are going to think that, and it's just like we start to take life really personally and really seriously. And what if we don't? What if we just accept the humanness of all of it? And I'm not asking you to believe anything I say. I'm just kind of using my journey as I share this with people to kind of get you to perhaps see what resonates with you and look at your own journey and see what it's teaching you. Because ultimately, everything we get lost in, everything we resist, everything is kind of showing us something. It's kind of showing us where we are, what we're doing. And it's all just part of the human experience. And when we see that, when we come out of the judgment and we kind of just sit in this space, people say to me, they go, wow, it's just common sense. Like, what you're saying is common sense. How did I not see that before? And often we don't see stuff because we have these blind spots. We have, our own beliefs that we hold about ourselves, about not being good enough, or just whatever the beliefs might be, needing something to be okay in order to feel okay. We look at the outside and we look at our circumstances. We want them to look a certain way to feel okay, whether it's, feeling like a success, or money, or our children, and we're constantly, attaching, like I said in that other video, we're attaching our inner well-being to something on the outside. And then we feel it. We feel unstable. It was a kind of wake-up call to go, what are you doing? And I was thinking about my post yesterday and how it's so easy still to hear, perhaps, that I'm just dismissing the behaviour, dismissing someone's struggle. You're just laughing and you're not taking it seriously, Kate. And I'll give you another example of what I'm talking about when you connect with someone beyond the behaviour. And this was a conversation I had with someone a few weeks ago, and we were in Wales. I'd never met this person before. And he asked me what I was writing about, and I told him, and he was really interested. And he said, this is a gift. And I said, yeah, it's not my gift. He said, this awareness. He said, it's a gift. And I said, yeah, it does feel that way, but it's not mine. It lands on us when we get quiet. It lands on us when we get curious, when we listen. And I think it's a gift for all of us when we just get curious, that's all. And so he was listening, and we kind of fell into this space of presence that I always share with you. And then he said, Kate, there was a period in my daughter's life when she was piss head farming. And I kind of paused and I went, is that a Welsh thing? Like farming whilst drunk? I was thinking, yeah, well, I mean, we all did some crazy stuff when we're teenagers. And then he laughed and he said, no, Kate, not. No, I didn't say that. I said self-harming. And it was like, in that moment, we did laugh. And you could think, we were laughing at the self-harm, but we weren't laughing at self-harm, obviously. We were laughing at just this moment where we'd completely, language had just failed us in that moment, and we were just thrown into presence, and then we talked about it. Obviously that behavior, that struggle is real, and it's hard. It's so hard to watch someone you love going through something really difficult. But he said to me, Kate, it was interesting because he said my wife was really worried about the behaviour and she got a bit lost in that. And he said, I went and had a conversation with my daughter and I felt really disconnected. And he said, don't get me wrong, I felt disconnected from the behaviour. And he said, and what happened was I found myself being able to talk to her beyond the behaviour. Because if I look at the behaviour, then then I'm kind of lost inside it, and I, go into the future and I worry, and it's terrifying. And he said, but I seemed to find this space where I wasn't connecting with the behaviour, and I felt this kind of lightness where I could see her beyond the behaviour. I could connect with her being, with her okayness, beyond what she's doing. And he said, and then what happened was she could then connect with her common sense, with, she could kind of get to look at the behaviour. Because when you're in that space, the other thing that happens is you're in complete acceptance. You're in acceptance of what is in that moment. It's like when we kind of look at the behaviour and the struggle, and we go into resistance of it, and we go into worry, and we go into our heads, and we get lost in there, we sort of lose clarity. It's like in that earlier video when I was talking about going into the rock pool and we splash around and we lose, and it just gets muddy, and we churn it up and we start to get lost inside it all. And we're not necessarily that helpful when we're there. And so yeah, he was describing his experience around, this conversation he had with his daughter where he accessed this space of wisdom, this space of common sense. And what happened was, because he wasn't focusing on the behaviour, he became detached from the behaviour. And that's kind of what I was meaning yesterday when I was saying, there can still be a lightness when you take someone seriously, but you don't get lost in their behaviour and take that really seriously, because that's what I used to do with my daughter when I got lost in her anxiety, trying to change it, and I resisted it, and I just wasn't present, and there was a heaviness around me, and there was a fear, and she would have heard my fear. And it was only when I came out of it and I found this presence within me, and it felt so different. And then she could experience a lightness, and in that lightness, she found answers for herself. And this guy, from what he was telling me, it was exactly the same. His daughter started to look at what she was doing, started to question it, and started to see, what was going on. And he said to me, he was like, worry is an emotion and love is a state. And, we do get lost in worry. It's what we do. We're human. There's no, on this channel, on this YouTube, whatever we call it, there's no judgment, there's no trying, there's no like should and shouldn't. It's not like you shouldn't worry. It's just notice when you are worrying, notice when you are focusing fully on the behaviour and getting lost inside it, because it will feel incredibly heavy. And then you notice when you come back into this space where there is acceptance. And, you might say, well, I can't accept that behaviour. And I'm not asking you to accept the behaviour. I'm asking you to accept what is in this moment, whatever it looks like, because you don't know what's going to happen next. When we go, I can't accept it, it's, I need to change it, you're experiencing your resistance, and you're not remotely present. Someone else feels it. They feel your resistance. They feel that you're judging. Even though you're not meaning to be judging, they kind of feel this kind of criticism, even though that might not be your intention at all. That was my experience anyway. When I was trying to change someone, they were like, oh, you think I'm doing life wrong? And then you come into this space of acceptance. You're not accepting next week. You're not accepting next year. You're not accepting, I just have to accept they're going to be like this forever. No, you're accepting this moment, however it looks. And you open up this space and someone else feels held. They feel kind of held in, because everything is suspended. All your kind of judgment around it, all your worries about it, all your thinking around it, all your drifting into the future, and in this space, they feel held in acceptance, in this space of everything is okay. And what happens is they can access their own wisdom, their own common sense. You don't need to give them all the answers. This is about opening a space where they can find what makes sense to them. They can see what they're doing. They can question. They're like, oh, this doesn't make sense. What am I doing? And what happens is, and then I need to stop talking because I've been talking 11 minutes. What happens is you open up this space of hope. Hope, I'm gonna do a different episode on this because it's interesting about hope and trust. They're not the same thing. I never saw that before. When you're trusting, hope kind of arises. When you're not trusting, hope is empty. It feels empty. It feels like you're trying, I'm hoping, but you're not trusting. It's completely different. But I'll tell you about that in another one. And also tomorrow, I think I'm going to tell you about this climbing metaphor, which came alive for me, which will maybe illustrate what I'm trying to talk about. I don't know, maybe put a comment in, tell me what you're hearing. I have no idea. I'm just putting it out there, and I'd love to know what you're hearing. Bye.